Zach Hyman reached the 50-goal milestone for the first time in his NHL career as a 31-year-old. Can he do it again?
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Now that the playoffs are over, the sports have stopped sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, entirely about Zach Hyman. We did one about Darnell Nurse last week. That was a little bit more of that had a bit of a negative connotation to it. I'll be fair. It was not the most flattering portrayal of Nurse his season and where he's probably going in his trajectory. But I was driving to the gym this afternoon and thought to myself, well, what's in the Oilers calculus from this past season? What allowed them to go from a good team to within a goal of winning the Stanley Cup? And the first thing that came to mind, in all honesty, was Zach Hyman. I know during the course of the postseason and in the aftermath, I had said it was Bouchard taking a real step. But today, for whatever reason, I thought it was Hyman. So today's episode, we're going to approach Zach Hyman's season last year. We're going to think about what it could look like going forward, and we're going to use his performance historically to kind of categorize where he's at in his career, where he might be able to get to, and a whole lot more. So starting out in the outset, when you think about Zach Hyman, the first thing that should come to mind is he's already one of the best free agent signings of the salary cap era. And I know that sounds hyperbolic 3 years into a 5-year deal, but Zach Hyman has already given the Oilers a ton of value. You get a 50-goal season out of a free agent in this era, that's insane. You know, if it weren't for Artemi Panarin on the Rangers, you'd have a real strong argument Zach Hyman might be the best free agent signing of the salary cap era, period. So when you think about where the Oilers are at and how they've managed to take a step, it's not only have they upgraded the supporting cast, it's that the supporting cast is really well tailored and really fits to what the Oilers need to get the most out of their stars. You know, anyone can be on a wing for Connor McDavid or for Leon Draisaitl. You know, the Oilers tried that. They did the Zach Kassian experience where they found the guy whose entire skill set was go get the puck, get it to McDavid. And Hyman has that in his toolbox. He is a good forechecker, but Zach Hyman gets to dangerous areas of the ice, and he's got an above average shot. You add those two things together and enable him to play with the best player in the world. It's very easy to see the calculus in putting together why they acquired him. So let's start here. 2 years ago, he puts up 83 points, 36 goals, 47 assists on 13% shooting, averaging 20 minutes per game, 20:09 to be specific time on ice. His most common line mates, McDavid and Draisaitl. The three of them were the Oilers' most common deployment 2 years ago. And then when he wasn't with those guys, it was Nugent-Hopkins with McDavid and him. Most favorable defenseman deployment, so getting out there with the best defensive pair. 29% against elite competition. That's per puck IQ. It's a database that tracks the quality of competition for players who they go up against. And that was the single lowest rate of his entire career. You think about where he was when he played with Toronto, playing with Marner and Matthews, now playing with McDavid. 2 years ago, Jay Woodcroft went out of his way to try and get McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman away from elite competition to be able to really tilt the ice and dominate in the minutes they were out there. As a team, the Oilers had 109 standings points. They were second in the division. They, of course, won in the first round against the Kings and then lost to Vegas, who did go on to win the Stanley Cup. But the Oilers were first in goals for. They had the best power play in the NHL 2 years ago, and they were first in shooting percentage. And Zach Hyman definitely plays a role in that. And you look at his season 2 years ago, and he checks in at, I want to say it's 13%. Yeah, 13% shooting, which is above average. The NHL average, it's gone up ever so slightly over the last 5 to 10 years. When I first started seriously watching hockey about oh my God, 13 years ago, where I started like doing content slightly, just the average NHL shooting percentage was about 9%. And we knew that. And we knew the average NHL save percentage was about 910. So when you added those two up, you got 100. And you could calculate how lucky a team was if they were below 100 or above 100 when you added up their shooting percentage and their save percentage. Hyman is above average. Even in today's NHL, he is an above average shooter. His only season in the NHL where he's below 10% is his first full season as a rookie, as a 24-year-old. And I know that's old for a first full season as a rookie, but this is somebody who played 4 years of college hockey at Michigan after staying in junior hockey for a while as well. So you think about, he was an overager in junior, 18 to 19 years old. Then 19 years old, 20, 21, 22, he plays at Michigan. Then he comes into Toronto. He gets a cup of coffee. He plays 16 games in that season. Then the following season, 82 games. And then at that point, he's a regular. He's in their top six. He has a couple nice seasons, 10 goals, 15 goals. Okay, for first 2 full seasons, that's fine. Then you get to 15, 21, 15. And you very clearly have a box type. You know what you think he is. And the Leafs, whether it was Babcock or it was Sheldon Keefe, they were using him as a supplementary piece with Marner, with Matthews, with Zararis, where his job was go get the puck and park yourself in front of the net. And you are seeing the difference in how McDavid and Matthews create from each other. You know, Matthews had 70 tucks last year. You probably won't see McDavid ever score 70 goals in a season. It would take a lot, and it would be a concerted effort to move away from what's made him successful historically. One thing that is unmistakable and really, I think, a driving force in Hyman's improvement, he shoots so much more as an Oiler than he did as a Leaf. His career high in shots on goal as a Leaf was, where is it? It was 156, and that was his first full season in the NHL, where he shot 6%, averaging 16 minutes of ice time per game. You compare that to the 3 years in Edmonton, where it's 213, 276, 290. That is a massive jump in volume of shots on goal. That alone should commiserate with a bump in statistical production. It's not a surprise you went from 15 to 27 goals when you shot the puck almost 100 more times. He shot the puck 115 times his last year as a Leaf. Then his first year in Edmonton, 213 shots on goal. You shoot the puck 100 more times, and you had a better shooting percentage. Excuse me, no, I'm looking at the wrong column. He went from 13% to 12.7%. So he had a 0.3% drop off in his shooting percentage, even though he shot the puck 98 more times. That tells you the shooting talent was there. It needed to be nourished, and it needed to have an opportunity. And that's why having him ride with McDavid enables so much, because it allows Hyman to really focus on just getting the puck on net, because defenses have to respect McDavid so much. So that'll do it for our first segment of this Zach Hyman-centric episode. Coming up next, we are going to talk about his season this past year, how he exploded for 54 goals. So be sure to stick around. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports are not sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. If you want something just to think about, if you go open FanDuel, they have lines for opening night of the NHL season on October 4th when the Devils go to Buffalo. They see their old coach, Lindy Ruff. The Devils are 1.5 goal favorites at plus 146. The over-under in that game is 6.5, priced at minus 110. So, yes, hockey, there is odds out there already for hockey this upcoming season. So, head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you to everybody who's hanging out on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you for everyone who makes the show a part of your rotation. And the dog days of summer when there is not a whole lot to going on, I'm going to try my best to keep giving you guys useful information to make you a little bit smarter, to give you something to think about, and give you ways to think about hockey you might not typically get. And I love talking about hockey in a philosophical way, in trying to get a deeper understanding, to always try and get a little bit better. That's your goal. If you are serious about your knowledge of anything, you always want more. You always want to read more. You always want to listen to more. And you want to be able to take input from other people. And it's what makes this space so interesting, because I can do whatever I want as far as trying to explore an idea, but I have to go out and prove it now. I think Zach Hyman had the year of his life last year. And why do I think that? Well, that's what we're about to talk about. So this past season takes a slight dip in counting stats. He goes from 83 points to 77 points, but goes from 36 goals to 54 goals. His assists halve. His shooting percentage goes up 5%, and he's playing 39 fewer seconds. Something of note, plays less. The Oilers' first line this past season was Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins, McDavid for the vast majority of the season. That was their most common first line. And then at points when the Oilers were chasing, when they needed a goal, you saw that Chuck Knobloch, I forgot about Chuck Knobloch, the baseball player. Chris Knobloch would deploy McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman when the Oilers were chasing and they needed a goal. They were most commonly deployed with Matthias Ekholm and Evan Bouchard. Big jump up in quality of competition, going from 29% of the time against elite competition to 34.6%. And that supports what we know, that Chris Knobloch didn't really care about matchup. He wanted to get the McDavid line out there as often as he possibly could. And that's in line with, it doesn't matter what quality the competition is. We want to see them out there, and they need to be out there as frequently as they can. Team results wise, a slight dip. They were 5 points worse, 49, 27, and 6. Once again, second in the Pacific Division. Once again, they beat the LA Kings in the first round of the playoffs. But this year, they beat the Canucks, then they beat the Stars, and they came that close to maybe winning the Stanley Cup against the Panthers. Third in the NHL for team goals, fourth in power play conversion rate, 10th in shooting percentage. So that is something to note, that even though Hyman's shooting percentage went up 5%, the team-wide shooting percentage went down quite a bit. Understanding the year-over-years and where they go in the range of a player's production, it's tricky. This is something that even the teams have to make educated guesses on. This is why they have data analysis teams to look through every single season a player has and say, well, if this is the best he can do, what's the worst he can do? And then how likely is it he's going to be one way or the other? And something else I want to point out, and we talked about it before, it's the jump in shots. It's the jump in production. So I'm going to click over to my notes here. So chances for per game, about one more per game. Expected goals, less than the year before. You know, it's funny. The year he had 36 goals, he averaged 3.42 expected goals per 60. This past year, 54 goals, 3.01 expected goals. Then you get to goals for, more than half a goal more per 60 minutes. The high danger chances for, down a little bit, slightly. The on-ice shooting percentage, up 3%, so that McDavid, Hyman, and Nugent-Hopkins trio, slightly better shooting percentage than the first line. The team save percentage, down 7%. And then individual chances. This is where you can start to think, okay, maybe he did do a little bit more. 2 more individual scoring chances, so just Hyman shots, not including McDavid, Nugent-Hopkins, whoever he's out there with. Individual expected goals down 0.05, 125 to 1.2. Not something to really note of. And then his individual high danger chances are up about a fourth per game. So all of that is telling you that Hyman kind of got the perfect storm of statistical production. And you can't even call him a power play merchant because he had the exact same amount of goals both years, 15 on the power play. He went from 21 even strength goals to 39 even strength goals. That is something to note. He also had his shooting percentage go up 5%, 5.5%, and he shot the puck 14 more times than the year before. So all of this is telling you that with volume, you're going to get more goals. And Hyman himself shot the puck more. We said it, shots on goal and scoring chances. Scoring chances include shots that don't get to the net, that get blocked, deflected, or miss the net entirely. So you're getting data to support this idea that he's probably not a 50-goal guy, but he's absolutely probably a 30-goal guy. I would almost assuredly say if he gets the same type of deployment with the same type of line mates, he's almost assuredly going to be a 30-goal guy and could very well be in the 40-goal territory. And that's upper echelon. You know, you only get 15 guys or so who hit the 40-goal mark in the NHL, even in today's bandbox environment where everybody scores more. Not a lot of guys hit the 40-goal mark. So for someone like Hyman, whose previous career high before last year was 36, and he's gotten an increase in goals every year since he's been to Edmonton and shot the puck more every year since he's been in Edmonton, you know, and it's not nothing to sneeze at. You know, his first year in Edmonton, 213 shots on goal. This past season, 290, 70 more shots on goal than his first year, getting about the same amount of ice time, 1928 2 years ago to 1930 this past season. So the math is there for Hyman to be a high-end player. Is he one of the 10 best players, 15, 20, maybe even 30 best players in the world, talent-wise? Probably not, no. But what he is good at, the positioning and the shot, you put that with the best player in the world, he's going to put up stats. I would not be surprised if Zach Hyman makes Team Canada at the Four Nations tournament next year. I would not be surprised if Zach Hyman makes Team Canada in the Olympics 2 years from now, because he is going to have the counting stats. He is good off the cycle, and he likes to forecheck. Oh, and the best player on the team, he's teammates with him, so he's probably going to want him on the team anyway. And I don't want to dump on Chris Kunitz too much, but if Chris Kunitz can make the Olympic team because he played with Sidney Crosby, if Zach Hyman plays the way he has the last 2 years with McDavid, he'll get on the Olympic team. And obviously the goal for the Oilers is not to get as many players on the Olympic team or awards or all-star game appearances. It's to win the Stanley Cup. But the more of those guys you have, the more likely you are going to win the Stanley Cup. So we're going to take one more quick break here on Locked On Oilers. Then when we come back, we are going to tackle what Zach Hyman's career averages look like and if he's going to go over those or under those this upcoming season. So stick around to this edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. We are all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Indeed leverages over 140 million qualifications and preferences every single day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better the results. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thank you to everybody who's hanging out on this Wednesday. Trying to game out every single person's projected season is a difficult task. And I'm sure I'm going to do it at some point in August when there's just not as much to talk about and when there is more nuance and there's more time for those types of projects, when the show scales back to only 3 days a week as opposed to 5, and I'll have an extra day to do prep. You know, I typically take twice as long to do prep as it does to do the episode. So for a 30-minute episode of Locked On Oilers, usually do about an hour of show prep. For something like this, where I had to go through a few different databases, I had to do a spreadsheet to compare the stats year over year, that's a good hour and a half of my day. When I do Liberty Blue, and that's an hour, that's a good hour and a half, 2 hours of prep. When I do Locked On NHL with Hunter Hodes every Thursday, that's a good hour of prep. So let's get on into what we think for Zach Hyman's 2024-2025. The Oilers have afforded themselves a little more leeway. I'm not prepared to say they can afford Zach Hyman to regress majorly. They can't. But if he goes from 50 to 35, the guys they've brought in Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson should be able to mitigate some of that offensive fall off. And at some point this offseason, we'll do the math. We'll do how many goals does it take to make the playoffs? How many goals does it take to comfortably make the playoffs? How many goals went out? How many goals came in? And that's the type of thinking that gets really in the weeds, but it's how you have to think about these things. Because when we only talk about a name, everybody knows who Zach Hyman is. But do they go under the hood? Do they understand what makes him successful? And that's kind of the trick to doing this type of evaluation. How likely is it that they can do what they did again? So I'm going to click back over to my notes. And if you look, his career average in the NHL is somewhere in the ballpark. And we'll start here. In Toronto, it was 20.5 goals, 24.25 assists, 12.3 shooting percentage, and shooting the puck 167 times, 167 shots on goal. In Edmonton, it's 29.5 goals, 24.25 assists on 15% shooting, and 260 shots per season. Almost 100 more shots on goal per season, playing about 2 minutes more per game than he did his last year in Toronto, if I remember correctly. No, that's not even true. He was 1906 and then 1922 his last 2 years in Toronto, then 1928, 2009, and then 1930. So about the same amount of ice time, but just having more opportunities to shoot the puck because he's playing with Connor McDavid, who doesn't mind being a facilitator. And it's a mutually beneficial system. You know, everybody will say, oh, Hyman's a tap-in merchant. He doesn't have to work for the offense. First of all, they're wrong. That space, that immediate 10-foot semicircle around the net front, that crease front, where the big brawlic defensemen are camped out because they can't chase the puck, that's the hardest real estate in the NHL to get. And Hyman is consistently there. He is consistently jockeying for position, and he's consistently using a lower center of gravity. He's getting low. He's bending over to use his butt to force the guy behind him to move. That type of play is difficult. You're going to get cross-checked. You're going to get shoved. But Hyman consistently gets to those high-danger areas of the ice, and it makes everyone more dangerous. Whether it's with Draisaitl and McDavid, or if it's with McDavid and Nugent-Hopkins, or this upcoming year, if it's with Jeff Skinner and McDavid, or if it's with Arvidsson and McDavid, they're going to have options. And we're going to talk about on tomorrow's episode whether or not there are real questions about the fit for Arvidsson and Skinner, whether there's such a thing as too much skill, but we'll get there when we get there. So as far as what I expect, you should expect Zach Hyman to score at least 65 points. I would say about 35 of those should be goals. He should be 35-25. If he is 35-25, he's solid. 13-25 and he's 13-14% shooting and he shoots the puck 250, 260 times. That's great. That would be a little bit less than the last few years. He took the most shots of any season in his entire career last year, and it was the second highest shooting percentage of any year in his entire career. His previous career high shooting percentage, 51 regular season games, 106 shots. Scoring on 20%, basically, 106 shots on goal, 19.8 shooting percentage. Scoring on about 1/5 of your shots is crazy. That's Matthews caliber goal scoring. So to almost triple that 5 years later and to go from 106 shots on goal to 290 and then still be within sniffing distance of your previous career high shooting percentage, that tells you the talent is there. And because it wasn't a massive jump in power play production, like we said, the Oilers' power play was actually worse in the regular season this year than it was the year before. So that tells you there's room there. So even if, that 39 even strength goals comes down to 25, there's no reason he can't be 15, 20 power play goals to make up for that drop off at even strength. So again, you start gaming it out in, well, can he do this? Then can he get to this benchmark? And if this is the baseline, how much better can it get? And really quickly, you can understand why the Oilers feel the way they do about Hyman. And it was a risky proposition, to bring in Zach Hyman when they did. At 28 years old, spending the vast majority of his career playing with elite talent, you weren't sure how real those results were, how sticky they were. Would they translate to the Edmonton environment? How would they translate to the Edmonton environment? And getting about the same amount of ice time, but with a player who's more of a facilitator than a shooter, it enables Hyman to get to that next gear. If you put Zach Hyman on Nikita Kucherov's wing, he probably doesn't score as many goals, but he finds a way to contribute. And you need guys like this. And I'll be honest, I can say hand up, I thought the Hyman contract would not age particularly well because of his style of play. The grinder, elite grinder, doesn't typically age well. And I underestimated just how good of a shooter of the puck Hyman is. And that should carry him, even if he does eventually lose a step to the aging process. So that'll do it for this Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. So if you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please throw the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell. Let me know. Over under 30.5 goals for Zach Hyman this upcoming season. Make sure to check out Locked On NHL, where Hunter Hodes and I are going to power rank all 32 NHL teams after free agency and the trade so far. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.